Hello, we are live. Today we have Santiago Held. Is that how you pronounce your last name?
Yep, held
Yeah,
is correct. Yes.
yes, that's correct. Santi, we can call him Santi today. We've been friends for about 7 years. He is also another Australian, but his background is Colombian. And he was one of my best and first friends when I came to church here in Australia, in Sydney. And it's an honor, it's a pleasure to have you here with me, Santi. Thanks for coming to the show. How are you?
Thanks for having me. Yeah, good. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Appreciate you taking the
Uh,
time.
the purpose of today is, having a conversation between two friends and basically sharing a little bit of your story, your testimony, how God has touched your life. So, to start with, have you always believed in God?
I think there was always an element to some sort of belief or deity. I think growing up, uh, as we discussed a little bit prior, I went to a Catholic school, so I think we were kind of taught a little bit about God. But I remember when things wouldn't go well, I'd say things like "stupid God," not realizing maybe what I was saying at the time. So I would say that I'd probably sit more in the agnostic kind of realm up until my uh, young adulthood days. Yeah.
And when you say that you believed in God or you sort of knew about God growing up in this Catholic school, what was the definition or the belief that you had about God? What was God for you back in those days?
I think he was a genie, really, a genie in that respect, but very surface level, very, you know, he would be there when things seemed to be really bad, and I'd have to kind of maybe let out a prayer of desperation, possibly, that things would work out. If something scared me, or I was like, oh no, I need to get out of this situation. God help me. But that's probably as far as it would have gone.
Wow.
So,
And I think a lot of us, myself included, and guilty a lot of the time, I would only go to God when I am in a desperate situation and I need help and I need money, I need something to get fixed. And I think that's a pretty normal, I would say, pattern of us humans when we just want to go to God when we are in trouble and we need some help. So
definitely.
so you go to this Catholic school. I guess you're a kid, you're a teenager, but then there's something at some point in your life when you actually meet God, and I guess your life gets transformed by God. So, what happened in your life, and if there was an event or something that happened for you to get to know God?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's been a few events really. Um, One of them, it's almost as if at the time there was a lot of resistance from me to because God was really wanting me to know Him, but I was very resistant. I had friends that would invite me to youth group. I would go to youth group. We'd even read the Bible, in high school, and then so I think there was always this element revolving around my life. At that time more uh, I guess around the outside orbiting around, and it was kind of there, and I'd think about it from time to time, but it never was really kind of the center. And then probably the most profound moment for me was a close friend of mine that we'd known each other since we were 13 years old. He had a pretty radical encounter, spiritual encounter, and he grew up in a Buddhist family, and he he had this, I guess, these significant spiritual attacks, and he through that he kind of navigated. He was able to find Christ, and that was a pretty profound moment for him. And this was a man that would, party a lot, sleep around a lot, and then one day he's just invited me to church. So I guess that was quite a profound shift for me. So I was 21 at the time.
Wow.
Coincidentally, maybe not coincidentally, but I was living at the time in Barcelona for 6 months. It was the first time living out of home, living overseas, and being quite young. So it really kind of was a landmark moment for me in many ways, to see I guess, what the world has to offer. And at that time, living of the world. And my friend, he was in the US doing the same thing, but that's when God kind of found him and put him out, and now he's leading a church as well. And so, kind of
Wow.
seeing that big shift in him, and still walking fairly closely together has been, yeah, pretty incredible. But that's probably been the one of the most landmark moments, I would say.
That's a beautiful journey. Thanks, Santi, for sharing that. And there's two things that you mentioned there at the beginning. You were talking about resistance, and as I think and I reflect about that word, I think we as humans, I don't know if this happens to all of us, but it certainly happened to me again when I was a kid. And I would feel in different seasons, in different environments, in different times in my life that God would be trying to get to me. He was like knocking on the door, literally. And I would be just very resistant all the time. I'm like, you know what, God, I'm not ready. Let me have fun. Let me have my
Mm,
time. I don't have time for you. And I
mm,
had probably like a very hard
mm,
heart. Um, and it was a lot of resistance. And now that was when I was, I don't know, 12, 15, 19, 20, 25. Like up until I was 30, there was a lot of resistance, like 20 years of my life, a lot of resistance. And the moment that I let resistance go, back 7 years ago in that season when I met you around those months, literally my life changed from darkness to light, or like it was literally transformed, just letting that resistance go away and say, hey, God, just do whatever you need to do. I'm here for you. I'm ready to, I guess, being humble
mm,
to for God to do his will. And I think resistance is, it's a very strong word that spiritually, I guess, and in our lives has a lot of weight. And until we don't let that resistance go, it's just like we're very stubborn.
yeah.
And if I think about it logically, let's say, I still don't understand why humans were so resistant when we think, or when we know that there could be a better way. I think we're like, oh, we never trust that there could be a better way. That the God way, it's not as good as we think it should be, and
Mm.
that our way, it's always better. So,
Yeah, it's the
ha,
original sin, right? It's man wanting to become God. So I guess I think it's something we all deal with and are challenged by. But it's what we do with it. Do we harden our hearts and kind of keep our heads down and try and numb ourselves, or do we open ourselves up to the reality of His truth? So
100%. And then, so you had these really close friends. What's his name?
Kevin,
Kevin.
I think you met him as well when you came a few
Yes,
years ago.
yes. And if you, so you briefly shared with us that you saw in him a radical transformation where he would, do all his partying and drinking and sleeping around, and then all of a sudden he radically changes. Does he reach out to you and he says, hey, Santi, look what happened to me? Or do you, talking to him, do you see how that situation touched you? But was it like he was trying to convince you, or you were just literally looking at his life and then you were inspired by his testimony?
Mm. Yeah, well, it was actually in the midst of my season in Barcelona, so I would say in the midst of my sin as well. So it was funny because prior to this, we would communicate via Skype because he was in another country, and he would, do things like send me pictures of the girls that he was sleeping with, things like that. And even at the time, I thought it was a bit much. And then one day he calls me and he's crying, and I've never seen him cry before. And he says, "I'm a Christian now." And
Wow.
I'm like, okay. And I guess because I'd gone to a Christian school, he assumed that I knew what to do, which at the time I didn't really know what to do. And that was it for a while. And then when I moved back to the Australia, there's this thing that's quite common with people that move overseas for a time and come back to their hometown, is that you've changed a lot, but the place where you're from hasn't really changed. So there's a kind of a challenge with that kind of psychology of trying to fit back into this world that you left behind, which you're no longer going to be part of again because you've changed so much because of all the experiences you've had. And he came back and he was similar in that sense, in that he had also had a pretty significant, momentous amount of time over there in the US, coming back again to a relatively unchanged group of friends. Um, and yeah, he would just keep inviting me to church over and over again, and it was getting annoying. But I was in a place that I needed it because I was pretty low myself and a bit heartbroken, and I guess feeling a sense of restlessness and emptiness. And so he said, "Why don't you come to church?" So I started to go to church. But I continued to fight it for a while. I traveled again overseas for another year and a half, and um, you know, so I think it took me a long time, probably only in the last 3 years, really, that I felt that really following God with like 110% of my life. And I think it's just these significant moments of moving to Sydney, moving back to Canberra, moving to Sydney again, and then finally moving back to Canberra, where I'm based at the moment, where I guess God kept pushing me in His direction for what He needed me to do, really. So I don't know if that answers your question or not, but
Yes, yes, it does, and it also makes me think. So you start going to church. You sort of do you become a Christian then, and you start to, I guess, read the Bible, go to Bible studies, go to church, get surrounded by Christian friends, and does your life starts to get transformed, or you just go to church and you're like, oh, you know what, this is not for me. I might just do it to tick the box, or like, because you were saying that only in the last 3 years you feel like God has really touched you, and you said now I'm at 110% with God, but this is in the last 3 years. How old are you again?
I'm 32.
You're 32, and you were in Barcelona when you were 21. So that's like, let's say
2021, yeah.
2021. So let's say 10, 12 years ago. So in the last three, you're like full on with God. But then in the first eight, there was a whole process or journey of transformation of knowing God. But I guess a lot of that resistance was still in the middle. And then maybe that conviction was not that strong yet. So what happened in those 8 years of you getting to know God, and then on and off, hot and cold? What made you, I guess, in the last 3 years is like, okay, now I'm fully committed to God?
Mm. Um, a lot of hardships, I would say. That's kind of what brought me to that place. Uh, when I moved back from Barcelona, and my friend was quite adamant, on fire for God, and I would really follow him around. So I kind of went as secondary, but I was still a bit ashamed about being Christian at the time. I was still not really, I wasn't sold out for it. And so pretty much right after Barcelona, a year later, I moved to Sweden for a year and a half because I was like, I love Europe so much. I want to move there. I want to live there. I want this to be my life. But I think in reality, I was looking for something to fill that, that hole that we have, and I think that was the journey for those 8 years, was trying to, I was, I guess sitting on the fence. I had so basically, I was when I was living in Sweden, I would go to church on Sunday, but I'd be going out clubbing on a Saturday, you know. And so it was kind of a mix of being on the fence for a number of years, and even a couple times falling back into kind of old habits, looking for that feeling of wholeness, and there was probably a lot of insecurities as well that were slowly cut away, and more mistakes were made, and then um, at the time, I think I was putting a lot of my hope into relationships, right, into marriage, and I kind of someone I was dating prior, I really lifted that person up on a pedestal, and I think when that fell apart, that was a quite a shock. But in that, there was kind of like talks about in Malachi about the refining of the fire, a refining of the silver, of those little bits that need to fall away. And so I think it was a lot of that, a lot of kind of maturity that needed to occur. I definitely didn't read the word often. I didn't really follow. I think I was in the church culture and around the church culture, like Hillsong and things like that, but I wasn't. That's probably as far as it went. Um,
Mm.
and I think that, yeah, there was a number of years where I was enjoying that a lot and quite comfortable in that until push came to shove, and I reached an age where I started to question a lot of things about what I was doing, where I was going in life, um, and thankfully God met me there. So
Wow.
yeah, so I was able to really feel that solidification and kind of walk through that to see the other side. So yeah.
And would you say, because when it's so interesting to hear these stories or your testimony in this case, because I feel like, we're humans, and ultimately we're in need of God for a reason. And even when we become Christians, we could still just continue, like we could just do the thing of going to church and be surrounded by church people, and probably maybe praying here on and off. Or but I think the real deal, personally, came when I was like, you know what, I don't care about what's happening out there. I want to see what's happening in here in my heart with God. I just want to get to know him. I want to try to I want to I want to learn how to listen to his voice. I want to be guided by his will instead of Raf trying
Yeah.
to say this is what is good for me. And it takes, I don't know what it is for you, how was it for you. And I don't think there's like a moment in life when everything is like it changes and then it's all perfect from that moment. I think it's a constant process of humility, of always being dependent on God. But for me was I also had, I don't know if relationships in a pedestal, but I really wanted to be a father, be a husband, and have a family and all of that. And I didn't succeed for so many years. And when I moved to Australia, I was 30 years old. I'm like, okay, God, I'm gonna put that resistance away, and I'm gonna give my life to you. And then for 3.5 years, I go through this process of trying to get to know Him. And Santi, I think I've said this to you many times, and I'm not going to go too deep in here, but you were critical in that process, and I want to thank you. I want to honor you because God used you to to heal a lot of things in my life. I'm not ashamed of it, and I'm happy to say it publicly. But I was addicted to pornography, and you were my accountability partner, and you helped me to stay strong. And it's not like you helped me to get out of it, but God used you so I could get out of it. And now I've been free for 6.5, 7 years, and I still cannot believe it. I remember those conversations we would had, and you were the only person who told me, "Hey, you have an addiction, and it's like when you're addicted to cocaine or to any drug, and like you're dependent on it." And I'm like, I never thought of it as a drug, and I never thought I was addicted. I just thought, it's a normal thing that I've done for 20 years or however many years. But then, yeah, you were critical in that process. So thank you, Santi, for letting yourself be used by God in that process. And then the other thing that I also want to thank you for, now that I'm just being open, I'm the reason why I'm married to a beautiful person. Her name is Deborah. It's because of this dude that, it's a long story. I'm not going to tell it here, but God used him so I could meet my wife, and I am eternally grateful for that day. It was one single day that everything worked out together, and I was able to meet her because of Santi. So yeah, thank you very much. So I think all of this, what I'm trying to say is that God, sometimes I don't know if this is good or not, but I feel like God, he's moving these pieces like playing chess, and he strategically places people in specific places in specific instances. And like Kev was placed strategically in your life, and then you were placed strategically in my life. And I'm sure I'm sure like you will continue to be strategically placed to bring light and to bring peace and love to other people. So as long as we put that resistance away and we're really being led by God, because if we're not led by God and we're led just by ourselves, probably we would not do what He wants us to do. So, um, and then during that process of, I guess, when I met you and all of that, I felt in that routine. I think it was routine of going to church, singing the songs, doing the church thing. But I think it was, for me personally, my first few months, it was just religion, honestly.
Mm.
And I would always hear that Christianity or getting to know God, it was not about religion, it was about relationship. And I could never understand that concept until I'm like, okay, God, what is this thing about of relationship? And I started to understand that He was a father to me, that He was my savior, that He was my creator, and I could talk to Him as I am talking to you. And I just started, like, I guess, exploring
Mm.
and talking to Him and praying without any fixed rules. I would just like freely trying to approach His love. And literally, I started to feel and to see that relationship being built and letting
Mm.
the, I would say, I don't know, the boundaries of religion just fall away or fall
Mm.
off. But I have to constantly, because that's easy for us to go back to religion, right?
Mm.
So all of this, what I'm saying is, what is your, or what has been your process of getting to know God and getting closer to God? What does it mean for Santi? I have a close relationship with God.
Yeah, great question. I would say that definitely personally spending time like in the Word is a big one. I think praying is very important. I don't do enough of it, but I definitely should be praying more. Um, and I think also having that Christian community is so valuable. Basically, they're the people that help you through the hard times, and then there to enjoy the kind of sweet times. Like um, it's a, I think it's so valuable in this day and age, in particular, the church, or I guess the community. Having that community is so important because we live so isolated these days, and so that's something that really helps mold you and grow you. You know, like so that would be my big three, I would say, and then kind of supplementary to that would be worship. You know, music, something that I think is very powerful and can be quite impactful in recentering me for meditating on God or the Word, that type of thing.
I really like when you, that fourth point. I agree with everything that you've said. Spending time in the Word, praying, community, and worship. And worship, I think, has different levels or different types. I thought worship just was just music, but I've understood and I've learned, I guess, that there's other types of worship. But for some reason, I don't know why. I don't know if this happens to every single human, but it does happen to me. When I am worshiping God through music, it's like I am transformed to a different planet. Like, it's so weird, and I feel like I just close my eyes and I just go somewhere, and I feel like worship. It's so beautiful, and I know that you play the guitar, you sing. Do you write? Do you like? Do you write letters? I mean, songs.
Uh, I don't have time for it,
Uh,
but I have attempted before in the past. Some of us from church have, but no, I haven't had a lot of time. But I
yeah.
think
Okay.
I think music in particular is an extremely powerful way of
Medium. Yeah.
connection with God and the Almighty, and I guess on a fundamental level, everything in the universe is created through vibrations, which is essentially what music is. So even just to consider that a particular key on a instrument hits you and it makes you feel a certain way is quite powerful, and to you can kind of see how God utilizes that as in heaven the angels are worshiping 24/7. So it's makes sense that music is a language of of holiness. So
It is. And I also think it's a way of creativity. And we had a chat the other day about how we humans we were created to create in different ways, and
mm,
something that I'm also going to take the opportunity to challenge you and I guess motivate you. I know that you're a very creative person with your talents that God has given you, so continue to I guess pursue that and shape those talents and work on those talents, because I I remember I used to, like, I am an engineer numbers guy, and we would have this conversation. I'm like, I would really envy your creativity, Santi. I'm like, oh, I wish I could do this, I wish I could do that. So just encouraging you to continue pursuing that creativity, because I know it's powerful, and I know that in ways you've been trying to pursue that creativity or those talents or those things that you're passionate about to create or to share the gospel, or to share in a way the love of God. Something again, you created this ministry for
strength.
strength. There you go.
That's
So
it.
uh, could you share a little bit about that? What is ministry of strength, and how did you create that concept, and what made you come up with that idea and to do it?
Yeah, so Ministry for Strength was my fitness business, or is the fitness business that I currently run. So myself and uh, business partner, we came up with the name Ministry for Strength, which I think is quite a unique, powerful name, and it allows me to also use my creativity, because it is like running a business. So you have to think of the marketing, you have to think of the visual side of it, the social media, which allowed me to be a bit more creative, and also interact with people, and fitness, which is something that I am passionate about and I think is very important. So that's kind of what I've been doing here in Canberra the last couple of years. But now I've started to pivot in a direction of photography and film. So that's something that I'm using that creativity that you mentioned, because I myself feel that God moves me around a lot, especially in this season. So I've had a multiple different types of jobs in the last couple of years, and I see how God opens doors for a time, and then when it's time, He closes it. And everyone's timing is different, but for me, it's been kind of these short little movements around that, particular time I'm here, and then but every time it's like a new experience to grow and develop from. So that's been interesting and exciting, and every day is different, which makes it interesting.
Yeah, and I think we all those different skills in the future they will be part of something big, like when you learn photography, when you learn how to build a business, when you learn how to do, I don't know, social media, all of that together eventually will come together and make a whole beautiful
Mm.
piece, I guess. One question, Santi, who is Jesus for you?
Yeah, big question, huh? um, I would say that Jesus at this stage is everything. It's my purpose for living, my stability, my community. uh, he's my sustenance, my adventure, my everything, really. I think he's been there in the times where I needed him the most, and I think I don't know what my life would be like without it. Certainly wouldn't it would be worse off than what it is now. So yeah, I would
Beautiful.
say that he is the most important thing currently in my life.
And if someone, let's say, hasn't had the chance, the opportunity, or like didn't want to meet Jesus, what would you tell to that person?
I would say that it's like drinking water for the first time. So it's like opening your eyes when you've been blind your whole life, or seeing the sun for the first time. I think it's easy to kind of see the fog of religion and church and hypocrisy as kind of covering that. But I think if you really delve deep into the truth, or even try to debunk it, trying to see if it's not true. you'll come to a conclusion that that his way is the most supreme way for us human beings. So I would say that is, if you're searching for something to put your hope and everything in your life in, I would say put it in Jesus.
Yeah, safe bet there. Yeah, there's no way
Safest.
to lose there, right?
Yeah.
And then what would you say as a Christian for the last 10, 11, 12 years has been your biggest challenge to walk with God?
I think uh, definitely having family that isn't saved, kind of seeing the shift and change in myself, and it's like as if it's like you've been to this, you've had this incredible experience, right? And you're like, oh, I want to share this, or I want them to experience it too, but they just don't want to, or it's like, which, as you probably understand a bit as well, as can be quite heartbreaking and tiring, and so you just have to trust in God. I think that's definitely something that has been probably the biggest challenge. There was a period where not being married was a pretty big challenge, but I think as I've become more confident in myself, it's something that's become something that I want, but it's not something that I struggle with as much anymore. I think it's yeah, more the family salvation is something that I wrestle with.
And I think it's a beautiful perspective because I think marriage, um, it's a bit inward looking. You want to be, let's say, or I'm thinking about when I was in that situation, I wanted to get married because I wanted this, I wanted this, I wanted this, I wanted this, and I could not get it, which I think we still have and can dream and pray. And I'm sure that God has an amazing woman for you. Ladies, he's still single. But I think now that you're saying that your biggest challenge as a Christian is not it's not inward looking. It's more about the people that you care about, your family. They are not saved or they haven't been able to taste this beautiful, wonderful way of living. So I think that's really really beautiful to see that it's about them. It's not about you anymore. Of course, you continue to struggle or to think through, but it's not the main challenge, right? So, but yeah, again, another encouragement. I'm sure you're light to their lives and they as they see you, yeah, that God uses you to touch their lives, as you have touched mine and many others. So we'll
Thank
we're
you.
gonna pray for those guys. And yeah, well, Santi, thank you very much for your time today. Thank you for sharing your testimony. If in a way you sort of said this before in one of the previous questions, but you have someone, that person is desperate, is confused, is sad, is struggling with life, is wondering if there is something else, what would you say to that person?
Yeah, I would say seek out a local church, start reading the Word, um, and know that there is more to life than what's here in front of you. Life is hard. Life is hard. It's not easy, but there is also beauty in life, and yeah, that there is glory on the other side. So keep pushing, keep seeking. But yeah, the answer is Christ.
Easy. Thank you very much, Santi. I love you,
Thanks.
my friend. And yeah, thanks for coming to the show today. Have a good one.
No worries. Love you, bro.